40. The final bill that we're going to do is Senate Study Bill 1087. Senator Schneider, do you have a committee report?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Your subcommittee of Senator Schneider, Bolton, and Zahn met. I have signed, and I still need to get your signature on this, to recommend passage of Senate Study Bill 1087. Senator Bolton did not sign.
You are in order for opening comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill makes a number of changes to Iowa's medical liability law. It can be summarized as follows. It caps non-economic damages at $250,000. It strengthens the expert witness standards by requiring the witness be trained in the area of practice for which they are testifying. It creates a certificate of merit for suits by having an expert certify how the care failed to meet standards. It promotes evidence-based medicine by creating an affirmative defense for the defendant. It places uniform limits on contingency fee arrangements for medical liability, and it expands Iowa's candor statute to allow more cases to qualify for Iowa's candor law. There are probably a number of changes that will be made to this bill before it's ready for the floor. We've received a proposed amendment from the Iowa Medical Society and also from the Trial Lawyers Association, or the Association for Justice, rather. And we're willing to work with both parties to try and improve the bill. I don't know that we'll get it to a point where everybody's going to be happy with it, but the House has already made certain changes to this bill, and I've already had conversations with the groups that I mentioned beforehand about making changes as well going forward. So I just want to be clear about that up front, and with that, I will just conclude my opening comments.
Are there any senators? Senator Bolton, you are in order.
Thank you, Senator Zahn. I'm very concerned about this legislation. I sat through the subcommittee meeting, and we heard from a lot of members of the community who would certainly be disadvantaged if this became our new system for holding errors in the medical profession accountable. We heard stories from victims of medical negligence whose lives have been absolutely ruined, and capping damages arbitrarily and putting fixes in the system that essentially give one side an unfair advantage in terms of evidence-based medicine, but not allowing the victims of medical negligence to use those standards to protect themselves, I think are grave concerns with this legislation. So I would ask the Senator to yield to a few questions.
Sure.
Senator Schneider, do you believe that there will be amendments that affect the caps on damages in this discussion?
That is one of the areas that I do believe will be open for discussion.
Okay. And when we talk about caps on damages, would that be changing the dollar amount or just removing the cap altogether? What do you foresee being part of that discussion?
I'm not taking anything off the table.
Okay. And in terms of what the House has done, are there any things from the House's version of the bill so far that you feel will likely be adopted in the version that, or the amendments that you pursue?
I think the cap on malpractice fees is one area that we'll probably be comfortable removing. That already appears to be below market for what's happening in that practice.
And then on the evidence-based medicine standards, do you feel there's room for changes in that in this legislation, or do you think that's going to stay the same?
Yeah, it's open for discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. I still have very serious concerns about what this does to the ability of someone whose life has been ruined by a preventable, easily detectable error. I have very serious concerns about patient safety in the wake of this legislation. These are very, very serious injury cases that we are talking about. We're talking about caps on damages that will only affect the people whose lives have been truly devastated by preventable harm. And we're focusing on a very exclusive group of victims of negligence in our state. So again, we're setting up a system where we have arbitrary haves and have-nots. If you were injured one way, you'd have a full potential for a recovery of over $250,000. But if you're injured in this specific set of circumstances, you're not. That's disturbing to anyone's sense of justice, I would think. We're tying the hands of Iowa juries who are sitting there evaluating testimony and evidence and making real decisions about people's lives. I think we have to be very, very careful about barring access to our courts in the full involvement of our jurors, Iowa citizens who collectively meet to determine issues that affect their fellow citizens. So I would urge opposition to this, especially when we don't know what the final version is going to look like. I think we proceed very cautiously when we're talking about constitutional right to trial by jury.
Senator Taylor, you're in order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too rise in opposition to this bill. I'd like to see a lot more work done on this than I think we can actually accomplish yet in the 50 or so days that we have left in this session. I am interested in it, but I think it needs a lot more deliberation to get everybody on board, because we don't want to pass something out and then go back and have to fix it next year and then next year and the next year. So I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Is there any other senators? I would just like to say I'm on the subcommittee. This is a very complicated issue, and I did have the opportunity like a week or two ago to meet with a lot of people that have tragically been misdiagnosed or something's happened. And I made a promise to all those people, and Senator Shiner and I have talked a lot about this, that there has been some amendments that have been brought forward, and I assured those people that this bill needed some work. The last thing I want to do is to certainly deny the ability of someone that has been tragically misdiagnosed or something, a mistake was made by a physician. With that said, we did see Iowa compared to all the other states in regards to the medical malpractice premiums here in Iowa. And what I saw is we're the highest in the Midwest. So that's the problem we're trying to attract. I do believe, and I've had assurances from leadership as well, that this is something that we are going to work on, and just to keep it, obviously, so we have an opportunity to continue this work. I'm going to support it here in committee today. But go ahead, Senator.
Yeah, thanks, Senator.
Senator Bolton, you're in order.
Thank you, Senator. And I guess my biggest concern is if we know something is coming out of the House, we know it's being amended and we're looking at an amended version, I guess I don't understand why this committee has to move this forward with a bill that we acknowledge is not what it should be, and wait and see what the House sends over and amend from there, as opposed to this process. Because right now what this legislation does is it really exclusively affects those with the most severe injury cases. And I just think that's the wrong approach to these cases. And you've talked to the citizens who've been affected by this. These are not fake injuries. These are not fake consequences. These are real people's lives that are being turned upside down by preventable errors, by illogical sometimes decisions about people's medical issues and truly impacting lives in a very direct, intimate, personal way. And I think moving it forward for the sense that just moving it forward is the wrong approach, and I would urge senators to seriously consider what they're voting for in this committee today.
Are there any other, please? We're trying to run a meeting here, so I appreciate the emotion on this, but is there any other questions? Senator Schneider, you're in order for closing comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Bolton, I appreciate your comments. Senator Taylor, yours as well. And I think it is important to mention, as Senator Zahn said, that we are trying to address a real underlying issue for those who do want to practice medicine in the state of Iowa. And that is the fact that malpractice insurance premiums are higher in Iowa than in any of our neighboring states. The information that we've received shows that Iowa's average malpractice liability insurance is $20,500 a year. Just across the Missouri River in Nebraska, they're paying only $11,500 per year. Iowa ranks 43rd out of 50 states in the terms of number of physicians per capita. And we are 40th or below for 14 of the 25 most common medical specialties. And this is a problem throughout the state, especially in our state's rural areas. And it's incumbent on us to do what we can to make our state a more inviting place for people to want to practice medicine and to serve our population and our aging population. What we're talking about doing in this bill isn't radically different than what a lot of other states have already done. California has a cap on non-economic damages of $250,000. In total, 35 other states have a cap like that and have implemented many of these other things that we're talking about in this bill. So it's in that spirit that I think it's important we move forward and do what we can to both make sure that victims of malpractice incidents are properly compensated for and taken care of, but that we're also making sure that we're doing what we can to make medicine an inviting occupation for people in the state of Iowa. And with that, I simply just move the bill.
Record roll call has been requested.
Senator Zahn,
Yes.
Senator Dawson,
Yes.
Senator Taylor, Senator Vizcaino,
No.
Senator Bolton,
No.
Senator Edler,
Yes.
Senator Garrett,
Yes.
Senator Kinney,
No.
Senator Peterson. No. Senator Schneider,
Aye.
Senator Schultz,
Aye.
Senator Shipley,
Yes.
Senator Sinclair. Aye.
Okay, Senate Study Bill 1087 passes on a vote to 8 to 5. It will be eligible for floor vote using Rule 40.